Day 24. As we pulled into the parking lot of Dick's Sporting Goods, my heart sank into my stomach with the sight of the condition of the building. A colossal hole into the building stood where the front entrance had once been. One corner of the building had completely collapsed, leaving bricks and rubble littering the ground. The building looked like it had been hit by a missile. Through the gaping hole in the building, I could see faintly that a few of the racks and shelves still stood, and a few of the lights were flickering vigorously but still on. I sat staring into the building when my wife, like the conscience in my own head, spoke the words that I was thinking. "Do you think it's even worth it?" Just as she said this, I saw a massive shadow move in the flicker of the lights, followed by a roar so loud that the van shook. Izzy began to cry, and Addie yelled from the back seat, "Mommy, I don't like that moo-moo!" The behemoth crashed through another part of the front of the store, causing the rest of the standing building to collapse down behind it. The beast was immense. 4 hooves the size of Volkswagens, attached to muscular, smooth-skinned, giant redwood-sized legs. It stood nearly as tall as the building itself. Its skin was dark gray, almost black, and its back was covered in razor-sharp spines. Much larger, but very similar to those on the lurkers. It did look vaguely like a bull in body shape, which is why I assume that the 2-year-old thought it was a cow. A thick and muscular neck held up the massive nightmare I would call its head. Spiked mandibles like those from the spiders surrounding a huge, gaping maw filled with rows of teeth, each the length of my leg and just as thick. Just above its mouth were 4 vertical slits, which again I assumed were the equivalent of nostrils. Enormous eyes that looked almost insectile stared at us in our vehicle. It had 3 long slits that ran the length of its neck, and with each roar would fill the air with purple fog. Huge horns, curled like a ram, sprouted from the side of its head, just above its eyes, gnarled and twisted and covered in a texture resembling the bark of a tree. The behemoth lowered its head just in front of our van and roared again, causing the very glass in the windows to shake and crack. "Holy fuck!" I yelled as I mashed the gas pedal to the floor, and with tires squealing, the van took off. Since the giant beast had been so close, we drove under its head and beneath its 2 front legs before turning and speeding off away from the building. With a grace I wouldn't expect from a creature so big, it turned and gave chase. Grace and I panicked and began yelling back and forth at each other in terror. "Fuck, it's chasing us," she started. "I know, how fast is it? I don't know, just floor it." "I am. Is it gaining on us?" I said as I began weaving around abandoned cars, trying to get to the road and back out of town. "Yes, can you go any faster? What do we do? I have the pedal to the floor, the van can't just plow through all these cars." The giant creature followed closely behind us, trampling through cars as it ran. As it got closer, it lowered its head and rammed into the back of the van, crushing the back hatch and sending sparks flying as the back end made contact with the pavement. "Mommy, I'm scared," Addie said through tears in the back. "I know, Addie. It's gonna be okay. Trevin, what do we do?" A million scenarios flooded my mind, yet none of them seemed like they would be effective. Suddenly, I remembered the other guns we had from the gun shop. Given the size of the beast, I didn't think anything short of a nuke was going to kill it. Maybe I could cause it to slow down, or we could get away. "Climb in the back, grab the 2 big guns and the ammo for them," I yelled, trying to sound as confident in my plan as I could. "Load the shotgun, then we're going to have to switch places, and I'm going to try and shoot it out of the backside window." By this time, we had made it onto the main road, which meant fewer cars in the middle of the road, and we could pick up speed faster. The beast lowered its head and nudged the back of the van again, crushing the hatch in a little further. "Which one is the shotgun?" Grace yelled at me, scrambling over the center console in the back of the van. "The long one, the one that doesn't have a scope on it," I responded as I watched the needle in the speedometer climb now that we were on a sort of straightway. "Got it. How do I load it? Never mind. No time. Just grab it and the ammo and trade me seats." Grace set the gun and the ammo boxes behind the center console and half-hopped into the passenger seat as I set the cruise control. She grabbed the wheel and I wiggled my way out of the seat and into the back. Grace slid into the driver position, clicked the cruise control off, and floored the pedal. I grabbed the gun and a box of deer slugs. I quickly ripped the box open and shoved 2 into the loading tube. I unhooked Izzy's car seat and slid it into the passenger seat. Sliding the side door open, the Colossus let out another roar and began to lower its head. I braced myself between the door jamb and the chair, pumped the shotgun to load a shell, and tried my best to take aim at the beast's eye from a bouncing and moving vehicle. I pulled the trigger as we hit a bump, and my first shot missed, hitting the creature's horn. The impact from the slug caused the creature's head to jerk slightly in the direction of the impact, but didn't slow the beast. I pumped again and fired a second time. This shot made contact with the center of mass of the creature's head. I saw a small spurt of purplish blood as the bullet hit, and the beast slowed, but only for a second. I reached down and tore the box of double-aught buckshot cartridges open and loaded one. Followed it with another slug. I pumped the shotgun, loading the slug first, and leaned out the open door again. My next shot missed the eye again, but hit just above the mouth, next to the slits in its face. I saw the purplish blood spray as the slug made contact. Again, the behemoth slowed, but only for a second. Although it only slowed for a second each time, it still gave us a second to slightly pull ahead. Shit! Grace yelled just before the van hit a big bump, and I saw a spider creature fly tumbling underneath the back of the van. The engine of the van was roaring as Grace was trying to keep the van going as fast as possible, yet keeping it on the road and avoid various obstacles. I pumped the shotgun again, loaded the buckshot into the chamber. The beast roared just as I fired. The large balls of the double-aught finally hit my target, and as they pierced the beast's eye, it lowered its head in what I assumed was pain. As its head came towards the ground while it continued to run after us, its horn caught the pavement and caused it to tumble over in a sort of clumsy somersault. As we sped away from the behemoth and towards the outskirts of town, it stood back up and let out one final roar after us as it watched us drive away. I gathered the shells and I put the gun and the shells back in the back of the van after closing the sliding door. I moved Izzy's car seat back to her base and kissed her forehead before turning and doing the same to Addie. Addie responded to my kiss by saying with tears in her eyes, "I want to watch a movie." My nerves rattled. I just smiled at her and told her, "Okay," before climbing into the passenger seat. As we got on the interstate just outside of town, Grace slowed the vehicle down to a more manageable speed, given the limited visibility, and we looked at each other with shock in our eyes. I put a random movie in the player for Addie and Grace, and I sat in silence, both of us visibly shaking from the tense situation that we had narrowly escaped. "We need somewhere to sleep. From the looks of it. A new vehicle," Grace said, finally breaking the silence and gesturing to the crushed back hatch, damage to the windshield. "Agreed. Place to stay first, then we'll worry about a new vehicle," I responded. "Hey, you remember that old farmhouse? The one just off the interstate, you always point to. What do you say we give that a shot? Seems far enough from town to be left alone is what I'm guessing. Plus, it's kind of close to the interstate, so if we need to bug out quickly, the option's there." "Okay. Should be up here on the right in a couple of miles. I always point to it, but I'm not quite sure how to actually get to it. I'm sure we can figure it out, but I think that's going to be pretty safe, at least as far as our options go," I replied, looking out the side window into the fog. As we got further out of town, the fog was still there, but seemed to be much less dense, and it made me realize that it was all coming from the creatures. Maybe it was some form of terraforming, but it didn't seem like it actually changed much. The fog didn't seem to have any effect on any of the plants. I didn't notice any effect in my breathing as I walked through it. These thoughts just brought me to one umbrella question. What is its purpose? What? What is what's purpose? Grace said as she glanced over at me. Huh? Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I had said that out loud. I was thinking about the fog. What purpose it may serve to these creatures, I responded. The bigger beasts seem to release it in the air, but I can't figure out why or what it does for them. If anything, I guess. Oh, okay, she said as she turned off the interstate at the off-ramp into the vicinity of the farmhouse. We're going to need to try and test a few back roads until we figure out which one leads to the house. I nodded. We tried a few roads and had to backtrack a few times, being able to see the farmhouse in the distance, but not being able to drive up to it. We finally found the right road and made our way to the driveway of the house. We both sat in the car, staring out the window, moving our eyes from the house to the nearby barn, then to the machine shed and back. I finally took the time to load the Desert Eagle without a word. Grace took the other gun. We both got out of the van. We left it running, and both crept up to the farmhouse. Grace stood by the door as I entered first. Once I got into the room, she followed. After a final vision sweep of the yard, we both took different floors, and we searched. I took the second floor. Grace took the ground level, and the attached two-door garage. Woohoo! Grace called out, and I ran downstairs to see what had happened. I found Grace standing in the doorway to the garage. One vehicle was missing from it, but the one that remained was a big GMC Denali SUV. I couldn't find anyone upstairs, I said, as we both looked at the vehicle. Me either, Grace replied. Well, looks like we got lucky. Fixed both our problems with one stop, I said, motioning to the vehicle. Yeah, thank God. It's been a really long and crazy day. Let's go grab the girls and Bodhi. Let's get settled in for the night. I'm tired. Good idea, I responded, as we both turned and made our way back out to the van. We collected the kids and the dog and we went inside. The cupboard still had plenty of food in them, and nothing really seemed out of place. This made me wonder if someone would be coming back to the house. However, as the day concluded and the darkness of night grew near, nobody came. We made a trip or two back out to the van to grab random amenities, and in the morning I would search the barn and the machine shed, but tonight we'd make use of the kitchen to cook and eat a decent meal. Then we all gathered in the master bedroom on the second floor, cuddled together in one big pile, and with guns loaded next to the bed, we all fell asleep. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I wanted to tell you thank you for watching tonight's video or listening to tonight's podcast. You can find MrCreepyPasta Storytime on any kind of podcasting platform if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening to the podcast already, you can find MrCreepyPasta on YouTube. For those of you that are interested in seeing me do more than just tell scary stories, you can also check me out at twitch.tv/MrCreepyPasta. During the weekdays around 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, I usually stream video games, and sometimes they're Resident Evil, and sometimes they're not. I'm also on Patreon. You can find a whole bunch of other people supporting on Patreon in the description down below, but there is a very, very special thank you to these people in particular. Jordan Alexander Sanchez, CreepyPasta Adam, Ken Lando Higuchi, Mazakine Champinski, The Red Oak Shield Virus, G Weevil 3, Diana Kraus, Stephen Van Huss, Chance Burton, Tristan Pelton, Nico Cow, The Ginger Bros, Last Blade Song, Eliminator 86, Steampunk Sinner, Caleb Dougal, Sky Harbor, The Homeless Bird 93, Bobby Carmen, Liam Newman, Aaron Stormcrow, Barbara Maceo, Thomas Burgett, Azazel Rotten, S-Man, Kirisuba, Bad Honey, Someone You Love, Said the King 56, Somber Puppet, Wolfie Nums, Shadow Morningstar, Sean Mills, Jesse Gonzalez, Mad Marstomp, Z. Kearley, Cassie Core, Mr. Thud, and Patrick Schoolmeister. These guys are the real MVPs, and all of you who are listening are also the real MVPs. Stay safe, everyone, and sweet dreams.